Welcome to Tuesdays at Lunch with Susan Blum, which is me, Facebook Live. I'm very excited to be back after a nice few-week vacation that we had over the holidays. I just assumed that people would not be really tuning in, and it would make more sense to take a little break. And actually, I had the thought to get a little more organized for our Facebook Live sessions. And so I have some interesting new things planned for you today. The first thing I want to say, though, is I'm just excited to start the new year together, and I look forward to a lot of great things that we're going to roll out as the year goes along. I've been very restless, actually, having a lot of new things here at Blum Center, and I'm excited to share that we're in our new digs. I'm still at Blum Center, but we added another 1,800 or 1,700 square feet onto the space, and we're right now in our new mind-body room. So it's a soundproof room where we have meditation classes, and actually we're working on some new programming for this room in the coming year. So very excited to add to our meditation classes and different kinds of meditation and different kinds of mind-body programs. And so this is one of my new ideas to really get off the ground this year. We're also going to have an IV room. I'm hiring 3 new doctors. I have an amazing sports medicine doc starting next week, Eric Rosenbaum, and I'm working on hiring a gynecologist, and there's all sorts of exciting things because now I have more space. And so we're really stepping fully into becoming a fully broad, specialized integrative health center with a lot of different medical specialties and a lot of different skills and tools and support services to help you really make the changes that we ask you to make, especially when it comes to lifestyle, which is, food and stress. And most of you who know me or know anything about the practice here already know that we're really very engaged in doing that already. We have a teaching kitchen, and like I said, here's our mind-body room. So that's a little summary about all the things I'm up to, the expansion and hiring new people. I'm also in the process, 2017, in another month, we're going to be fully launching our whole new digital platform, which I'm very, very excited about, and I'll tell you more about that as the weeks go, because we're really in our lead up to that. And really, my goal is to bring everything we do here online so that people from all over can access cutting-edge functional medicine treatment programs to do on their own with our support, with coaching support, as well as guides, and to make it very sort of supportive and interactive. So stay tuned for the digital platform. That's really in our last weeks of being ready to sort of flip that switch. So that's what I'm excited to share is coming. And the third big thing for 2017 is that I wrote another book, right? I wrote a book on arthritis, and that's going to launch in the fall, October 2017. So we're just finishing up the revisions with my publisher, tweaking it. And so I've been a busy girl, but I am really looking forward to 2017, sort of finishing all these things I started. And then having some ease as we move out of 2017 into 2018. So I'm glad you're all here with me on this journey. And my new idea for my Facebook Live is to be a little bit more organized and to give you some more tools and support for learning this stuff with me, right? So rather than just throwing out some ideas, I want to actually start teaching things in a more organized way, perhaps. And so the first thing I thought to share with you all this today and to organize for the next several weeks is a discussion about fatigue. Now, I have to say that people come in to see me and all of my clinicians here. Fatigue is 90% of the people have fatigue or just not enough energy or wishing they had more energy on their list of issues that they want to work up or understand or treat. Fatigue is something that is not well treated or understood or evaluated in the conventional medical world. Once you check to see if you have anemia and if you're low in iron, your doctor probably doesn't know what else to really do about that. And for me, and in functional medicine and integrative medicine, I have a very, very clear checklist for working through fatigue and trying to help people understand, why you're tired. And so I'm going to share that with you over the next 4 weeks. To make it easy, you will see as you're looking at the video that I gave you a link to my handout, and this is the handout I use in my office. I actually print it. I have it printed. I put it on front of me, in front of me between myself and my patients, and we go through the list. And it helps people organize and understand the testing we're going to do and why. And each of these things look at our foundational problems or imbalances that might be the cause of your fatigue. And you need to work your way through all these steps to really get to the root cause. And in functional medicine, we're working on root cause. That's what we do. And so if you download this piece of paper, what you'll see is it says, causes of fatigue. It's just the checklist, okay? It says fatigue evaluation. Number 1, is it nutritional? Number 2, is it hormonal? Number 3, is it toxins or food sensitivities? And number 4, is it a chronic infection or a chronic imbalance in the gut flora, right? And so these are the 4 weeks and the four sessions that I'm going to suggest we spend together. And these are the steps that I work through. And it outlines it for you, and it also, this is your take home, so that after you hear me, you'll be able to refer to it. It also shares some of the testing. So for laying things out, today we're going to talk about, is it nutritional? Because that's number 1. And then next week we'll go to, is it hormonal? Okay? So let's talk about food and nutrition. So when you think about food, I think of it in sort of 3 sections. The first is, what are you eating? The second is, how are you eating? Are you skipping meals? Are you fasting? Right? So it's the what, it's the how. And then the question is, do you have any deep nutritional deficiencies that might actually be contributing to your fatigue? And that's where the testing comes in, and I'll explain more about that. So let's first talk about what to eat. And sometimes I refer to this as eating for energy. The first thing you have to do is fix what you're eating, because sometimes food is the whole problem. And when you repair sort of the way you're eating and what you're eating, often the fatigue improves tremendously. And it usually is at least one of the pieces of the puzzle. And here's another take-home point. Any symptom you have is probably not one thing. It's probably several things. And so I like to use the analogy of a puzzle. So you're this puzzle, and we're going to try to find out the pieces of your puzzle, and we're going to take each piece and sort of put it in the puzzle, right, and sort of fix it or adjust it and address each piece. And as we address each piece, the puzzle fills up and becomes whole. So one of the pieces, I guarantee you, is what you're eating. And, unless you're already like someone like myself who's already eating clean and I know how to eat for energy, but if you've never sort of done this before, then food is an issue. And what does it mean to eat for energy? The first thing is about sugar. Sugar, and coming off of the holidays, this is a very timely discussion, I am sure. And by the way, I forgot to mention, I'm going to try to keep this to 15-20 minutes, and then I'm going to leave time for questions. And if there aren't many questions, I'll just keep talking. Sarah, how far along am I? Because I did an intro, so.
You get about 5 more minutes.
Okay, so we have about 5-10 more minutes. So eating for energy, what does that mean? Sugar. When you eat sugar, so what is sugar? That's the first discussion. When I say sugar, sometimes people say, but I don't eat sugar, because they don't eat donuts, and they don't put sugar in their coffee or their tea, and they don't eat candy, and they don't eat sweets. But sugar is a lot more than just sweets. Sugar is bread. It's anything that your body metabolizes really quickly, and it turns into sugar. So when you eat, processed foods like crackers and bread, and is everything okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, crackers and bread and carbs. Processed carbohydrate flour products. You can easily digest that, and it gets digested really quickly, and it causes a spike in your blood sugar, and that is referred to as the glycemic index or the glycemic load of that food. So high glycemic foods turn into sugar very quickly in your body. And so when we say about eating sugar, I'm actually referring to eating high glycemic food. And when you eat these foods that are, have a high sort of sugar when it's processed, turns into sugar easily in the body, your blood sugar spikes. And then what happens is, after it spikes, it crashes. And that leaves you tired and looking for your next sugar fix. Now, the same thing can happen with caffeine, where you get a little addicted to caffeine and it spikes you and gets you going, but then you're going to crash. So the ups and downs of eating high glycemic foods all day, which isn't just flour products, processed white flour, products, but it's also in things like, skim milk that has all of the fat removed. Or it's even when you think about yogurt, if you go and look at the yogurt container, like the yogurts that have fruit in it, if you read the label and it says more, and some of the yogurts have 45 grams of carbs and over 30 grams of sugar in a yogurt container because it has all that fruit syrup in it, the fruit yogurts. That is a big sugar load to take into your body, and that's a lot more high glycemic than you realize you're having. So certainly that bagel in the morning, we always joked about sending the kids off to school with their bagel, in the morning, is not such a great way to help them start their day. And the glass of orange juice, right? Orange juice is vitamin C, but it's a glass of sugar. So there's all sorts of ways you can just spike your blood sugar gets spiked up, and then you crash. And so cutting back on those foods is number one. In addition, when you're choosing those foods, you have to, so what should you choose? Choosing foods that are high in protein foods as well as healthy fat is going to keep your blood sugar more even during the day. So I always say at every meal, make sure you have a good source of protein, and it could be vegetable protein. Lentils are just as good as a piece of chicken for keeping your blood sugar stable, okay? And healthy fat. So lots of olive oil, nuts and seeds, so snacks, using nuts and seeds as snacks, but also things like avocado. That's why these healthy fats turn out to be really good snack foods, because they keep your blood sugar even during the day. Okay, so what should you eat? Not low glycemic, it's called, staying away from those high glycemic foods. Low glycemic with plenty of protein and fat with each meal. Okay, so more nutrition and discussion another day, but for the energy fatigue discussion, that's where we'll leave that. In terms of how to eat, it's really about not skipping meals. And I think that, it's really important not to go more than 4, 5, 6 hours during the day without eating, because what happens is your blood sugar starts trying to crash. You have an emergency release of cortisol from your adrenals, because cortisol raises blood sugar. And so it becomes a little emergency in your body to raise your blood sugar again. And so you end up in this sort of up and down of your blood sugar all day if you're fasting and skipping meals. And so I try to say, eating, some people know they need to eat more frequently, but I tend to say don't go more than 5 hours, really, at the most, without eating, if you want to have sustained energy. I think it's important to have breakfast, and that's a whole discussion, but I think it's okay to have a later breakfast. Some people that are managing their weight and weight loss, we talk about what we call sort of intermittent fasting, which is a 12 to 14 hour fast overnight, which might mean a later breakfast, and that's okay. And that helps increase your metabolism, which is great. But then as the day starts, you should eat regularly food that has protein and fat. And the last thing I want to talk about, which is really just as important as what you're eating, is do you have any nutrient deficiencies? And this is how that can happen. Sometimes people aren't eating a lot of nutrients in their food, so that's the simple explanation. But sometimes if you're a person who has digestive issues, you might have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, you might just have a lot of bloating or gas and don't even know that you have a diagnosis, but you know that you have digestive symptoms, you might actually be having trouble digesting and absorbing your nutrients. And therefore, it's really important to determine if you have nutrient deficiencies, and then potentially also to investigate your gut, which we will get to actually it'll be week 4, we're going to talk about the gut. And you can always go on my website if you want to, blumhealthmd.com, if you want to go find out more about gut health. But for this moment, what I'll say is that I want to stick with nutrition. And my favorite way, let me show you, my favorite way of testing for nutrient deficiencies is to do a functional medicine test to make sure that your body has enough nutrients to work. It's not enough to go to your doctor and say, can you measure my B12 levels? Because your doctor is going to just measure it in your blood. Now, the blood will tell you if you're digesting and absorbing it, so that is sort of good. That the blood levels can tell you if your digestion's working okay. But to decide whether or not you have it inside your cells enough to make your mitochondria work, what do you need to have energy? What makes your energy? It's called the mitochondria. And the mitochondria have this thing called the Krebs cycle. It's an energy pathway. It's the energy pathway inside every cell of your body has mitochondria that make your ATP energy. Your mitochondria needs vitamins to work. And so this test, I'm not trying to promote Genova. You know, there are other companies that do this too. I happen to use this test. It's called a NutriVal. But it's really an organic acids urine test. And that's the component of this that really looks at the vitamins. And the organic acid urine test looks at, this is actually my results. This is the test I did on myself. It looks like about a year ago. And it looks at how well my Krebs cycle is working in my mitochondria, how well I'm taking my fats, carbs, and proteins, bringing them into the cell for combustion. And the mitochondria needs so many things. It needs B vitamins, and it needs magnesium, and it needs lipoic acid, and you need to have enough antioxidants or you'll get oxidative stress in the mitochondria and it won't work. And so this test evaluates your biochemistry. And if your biochemistry isn't working well, we can deduce if you need more vitamins. So follow that for a second. And then we're gonna pause and I'll take questions. But what I'm looking for in my nutrient deficiency evaluation is your mitochondria, is your biochemistry working? And are your mitochondria, because there's many of them, it's a multiple, are your mitochondria functioning well? And we have to figure that out to figure out why you are fatigued. And if your mitochondria are great, then that's not the issue. So we're going to go through, so fatigue evaluation is a checklist. Is it this? And if it's not, well, it's not that. So let's keep going, right? So we just keep going down and checking off the list to see what is your cause of your fatigue. So you'll see when you download this sheet of paper that I gave you, your outline, it says there's a link to the NutriVal test. And you can actually click on that link and it'll take you to Genova's website and you can read more about that test. We do that test here on, anyone with fatigue gets that test here. Our nutritionist, you don't even have to come in. If you want to come visit us, you can see our nutritionist does this test for her clients and evaluates the results herself without even us physicians doing it. Like, you don't have to come into the medical practice. You can do this with a nutritionist. And there are other functional nutritionists and chiropractors and other kinds of clinicians that do this test as well. And you can also go on Genova's website, and they will tell you practitioners that use their tests. And that's another way to find someone that you can do this test for. Last but not least, I have on here is check for low iron anemia. That's in a routine blood work, and that is something your conventional doctor will probably have done. So,
Question, you can keep going.
Oh, good. All right. So, so right now there are no questions, so I'm going to just keep going. So when you check for your low iron then, so I'll say a little bit more about that. When you check for your low iron, the thing to ask your doctor to test for is something called ferritin. Now, ferritin is the body's storage form of iron. And so you want to make sure that you get your ferritin checked, because you might not be anemic, but you might be low storage of iron in your body. And if your ferritin's low, there's been great studies that have shown that if you give even if they're not anemic, you give someone iron and they get their ferritin up to 50 or over 50, they feel a huge improvement in their energy. You know, there's a substantial, improvement that they feel. And so, so have your ferritin checked. So let's see, what else do we want to talk about nutrition-wise? So we talked about, so to summarize, in terms of fatigue and a fatigue evaluation, you're going to work on eating for energy, which is cut that sugar out. And look, after the holidays, I know it's hard, but the cold turkey is the best way to go. And so making sure you're eating healthy fats and proteins, so what you're eating, how you're eating, not skipping meals, and then testing yourself for the nutrient deficiencies and getting tested for iron. Now, when we go back to our list, and by the way, I'm going to just say something about my book, which I hardly ever talk about on the Facebook Live, I realize. My book, which came out, I'm going on 4 years ago, is going to be re-released. I did a revision. It's got a 3-month guide that I sort of wrote and is now in the revised. In a month or so, February 21st, the revised book is coming out. I'm really excited. But there's a whole discussion on food. I mean, the first section in this book is all about food, how to eat an anti-inflammatory diet, which is, and all about sugar, because sugar is inflammatory. So an anti-inflammatory diet, or having someone help you eat a healthy, balanced, anti-inflammatory diet will naturally be low glycemic. And when you look at food plans, like if you ask me, okay, let's imagine a question that says, which diet is the right one? Like, should I be paleo? Should I be Mediterranean? Like, what food plan should I follow? I would say that paleo is probably going to have the least carbs in it. As we know, paleo people cut out all carbs. But I tend to advocate, there's a way to do paleo where it has still a lot of plants. But because the gut health is so important, I don't like to take out all carbs from somebody's diet, or at least not emphasize. Emphasizing plants is still primary. And so I believe 70% of all your food should be plant-based. But I think that when you look at a plant-based sort of food plan, the one that addresses the low glycemic piece is a Mediterranean diet, which is the sanest food plan out there, right? It's, what does Mediterranean diet stand for? It stands for lots of nuts and seeds, lots of whole vegetables and fruit, not even pineapple, which is a high sugar fruit. You don't get pineapple in the Mediterranean, right? It's a lot of berries and apples and pears, and like all these things are and peaches. These things are low glycemic. They don't give you a big sugar rush, and it's all in moderation. Mediterranean diet's all in moderation. So minimal dairy, but a little alcohol, and some whole grains, which are low glycemic if you eat them with all the fiber intact. And so a Mediterranean diet is a low processed food diet, which is really going to be a great way, and it's rich in a lot of fat, a lot of olive oil. It's with all the meals have a lot of fat and legumes and protein. So, because I'm an autoimmune specialist, I also pull people off gluten and dairy. And so a gluten-free Mediterranean diet is really sort of my favorite way to go about choosing a food plan. Especially if you're doing this on your own, that you can get a lot of information about eating that way, and I think that's easiest rather than being needing to follow a fad diet that only lasts 30 days and then you're back to square one. So as a lifelong way of eating, I think a Mediterranean diet's great. How am I doing on time?
Just a couple of minutes left.
Okay.
David said he's tested low on ferritin.
Yes.
Multiple times over the years. It's amazing how the energy returns when it rises. Yet conventional docs rarely check. Very thankful for functional medicine.
Okay, great. And so and it's very interesting about ferritin is that, and I'm sure you all see that question that he put up. Ferritin's a really interesting compound, lab test because. I have local colleagues who send me patients, and I had this. She actually became a functional medicine doc herself, but she was a hematologist, and she used to send me all of her low ferritin people. And there are people who, if you're somebody who just can't get their ferritin up no matter what, and you've been going to the doctor and they're trying to give you iron and it's not going up, the first thing that you need to check is your gut. Because we've talked a lot about dysbiosis here, which is an overgrowth of yeast or bacteria in the gut. Well, there are actually bad renegade bacteria that make something called siderophores. Sidero means iron. And a siderophore is just something the bacteria secretes and sends out, and it gloms onto the iron. So you can't absorb it. And so fixing the gut, chronically low iron, in somebody who's not girls who have very heavy periods can be anemic and have low iron, and that's a good and then we know that's a reason why they're low in iron. But chronically low iron in somebody who doesn't have the issue with their periods, you really have to think about, well, two things. One is dysbiosis and problems with digestion and absorption in the gut, 100%. And then the second thing is, you really do also need to do a stool test and make sure that somebody doesn't have. If you can't explain why somebody's anemic or they're very low in ferritin, you want to make sure that there's no polyps or anything bleeding in the gut or bleeding ulcers, blood coming from the gastrointestinal tract. And that's my conventional hat, that I'm putting on. As a conventional doctor, we just always want to make sure there's nothing that's the worst case scenario. And so you just want to make sure there's no bleeding from the gastrointestinal tract. But in my experience, the most common reason, and so when I fix the gut, and I work on healing the gut every day in the practice here. I think, we go through probably 20 stool tests between all of us docs here every day we're sending out. I mean, it's ridiculous. We do so much stool evaluation and gut healing here, and fixing the gut and what does that mean? It means repairing the microbiome, improving the gut flora, getting rid of or thinking about pruning the inner garden to prune out those bad bacteria or yeast or candida that's sort of sequestering your iron, and helping the good bacteria flourish, helping the flowers grow. And we work really diligently on that, and as we see the gut heal, the iron goes up. Magic. And it's really amazing. And that's also a way that's going to help you digest and absorb and get your nutrients in. I have people, it's very frustrating. You spend all this money on organic, colorful food, and you're eating a vegetarian-based diet, and you really feel you're doing everything, and then your gut is a mess, and you're not getting the nutrients. And so just because you're eating well doesn't mean you're not nutrient deficient. And I want you to keep that in mind. And if you're somebody who has a lot of digestive symptoms, consider doing sort of a gut reboot, a gut cleanse or a gut, again, I have the gut program on blumhealthmd.com. We're in the middle of finalizing the touches on getting it perfect. So I'm going to really start sending in everyone there at the end of the month, but you can go check it out now. And because healing the gut's so important, and you can see now why it's important even for fatigue, So we're going to wrap it up today, and thanks for joining. Next week, actually, we're going to talk about really cool stuff. Next week is hormone week. And so we're going to talk about the thyroid. We're going to talk about the adrenals. We're going to talk about sex hormones, right? DHEA, testosterone. We're going to talk about insulin as a hormone, how insulin can drive. And I talked a little about that today because that's in relation to blood sugar. But your whole hormone orchestra, and how all the symptoms of fatigue can be, from adrenal, thyroid, sex hormones, and how they all interact, and how we're going to help you feel better. So until then, have a great, great week, and I will see you all next week.